Welcome on into the Philly Influencer Live podcast on location in Google Hangouts with the Bitter Birds as we got our man, the number one Birds, Sixers, dabbles in the Flyers, Adrian Fedke joining myself, Tyler Trumbauer, here on the Philly Influencer Live podcast. Technical difficulties and two people that have together maybe a quarter of a brain have decided that we just scrapped Mixler for this week's podcast, and that's what we get for taking a few weeks off. But we're back, 2017, brand new. Here we are, going to start on the Philly Influencer Live podcast, and hell or high water, we're going to put one out each week for the next 52 weeks of 2017 because, well, we hope the Philly teams will get better, so our coverage needs to get better as well. But that might be a little too hopeful on both parts, if you know what I mean. So, Adrian, how are your holidays, sir? Welcome on back to the podcast. Hope you had some good time with the family and friends.
Yeah, I had a great time with the family and friends. Going to actually have some more time with the family and friends. See, I'm one of those guys that celebrates Ukrainian Christmas. So this coming January 7th, this coming Saturday, I will be getting more presents.
Ukrainian. So do you do both the
Catholic,
the traditional
Catholic, traditional Catholic Christmas, and then Orthodox. So my mom's side is Ukrainian Orthodox, so we're going to be celebrating that during the weekend.
Now, is that is there a tree involved, or do you use any type of forest?
There's trees. It's wrapping paper. It's just like Christmas. It's just on another day because they don't know what. Sounds good. What it really is.
And you don't get off for it either.
I request off. That's what I do.
Oh, okay. All right. It's 2017. We got to have inclusiveness. So I'm sure everyone got to have off because I'm sure if I went to my boss and said I'm going to celebrate Ukrainian Christmas, I would probably get a pink slip. But nonetheless, you enjoy that with you and yours, and a belated Merry Christmas and an early Merry Christmas to you at the same time here on January 5th. And nonetheless, it's an unfortunate start of the season for Eagles fans as the Bird season is over, heading into Wild Card Weekend this weekend on Saturdays and Sundays. The Birds will not be there for 2-3 years in a row here. No Eagles football in the postseason. So we're going to, in this upcoming 45, maybe 50 minutes, especially with our delay of technology, Adrian is a man of many projects, so he'll have to get going here as we delve into the evening hours, already hydrating for the big night ahead. He has, I kind of like this video aspect because you can't hide anything from me. But nonetheless, in the next podcast, we're going to be putting a bow on the Eagles season, talking about the Howie Roseman year-end presser. Still, mum is the word from Doug Peterson. Didn't feel the talk after the season, did the rookie head coach. But we'll talk about Howie Roseman, his thoughts on the inner workings of the team as far as building towards the draft with director of player personnel or whatever his title is, because titles are irrelevant in the Eagles organization, Joe Douglas, and then maybe dabble in some Sixers as we found out where Joel Embiid is sitting in the All-Star voting so far. And, of course, that also tells us where he sits in his quest for a date with this unknown female celebrity in his DMs. Adrian, so let's start off as well with the Eagles. Put a bow on this season, 17 weeks in, and man, was that a whirlwind. I mean, you're talking about expecting mediocrity and then throwing a wrench in with the Sam Bradford trade to the Wentz 3-0, to losing games, and then luckily, I think the underlying theme is we're just happy that Carson Wentz played all 16 games, and I believe that's the first time the Eagles have had that since 2008 with McNabb.
Yes, yeah. So they got their starting quarterback. That's what this season comes down to. Obviously, there's some disappointment because of the 3-0 start and for them to finish 7-9. But when you really, really look at it, they were supposed to be a 6-10, 7-9 football team. That's pretty much what happened here. So they were who we thought they were, so to speak. So there's that.
Very true.
And as for Carson Wentz, we saw glimpses, and that's what we're looking for in this rookie season. We saw glimpses of greatness. And as the season went along, he started learning how to scramble, learning how to escape the pocket, be elusive back there, seeing more and more of those type of traits. So there has been more progression during the last month of the season. So started off hot, regressed a little bit, but now he's back on the upswing, and yeah, we're all excited.
Good. I mean, we truly are, and there's really not much else to be excited about in the city of brotherly love if you're a sports fan. So you have to clamor on to those spokes that are on the Wentz wagon so far. So, I mean, really put on this season, do you feel disappointed that the Eagles did not make it to the postseason? Obviously, the NFC East, a very difficult, depending on how scenarios played out, there could have been 3 NFC East teams in the playoffs, or are you okay with them finishing where they did because that's basically what we expected in the preseason?
I mean, I don't want to say it's okay to not make the postseason, but because it was expected, it's not really disappointing, so to speak, because yeah, it was expected. This is what was supposed to happen. So because it was what it was supposed to happen, it's fine, whatever. What I really cared about this season was Carson Wentz. That was it. Once I knew Sam Bradford was gone, I wanted to know if we had our franchise quarterback. And when you look at Carson Wentz, he has the qualities, and you can even compare him to Jared Goff. I mean, thank God we didn't get Jared Goff. You see him play out there; he looks lost, like a puppy out there. Mm-hmm. So it's encouraging that we have the guy, and now that they have the guy, they have Carson Wentz to build around offensively. They have Fletcher Cox locked up, only 25 years old. He's the building block on the defense. So you have guys that you can build around now. Now the question is, can Howie Roseman and company build around these guys? That's the question.
That's true, and that's where it's going to come into it. But before we get to the front office folks, looking at the sidelines and Doug Peterson, what do you do if you had to give him a grade? Because obviously, me still being a college student, I live in grades. I mean, C's get degrees in my book, but not for Doug Peterson. We don't really want him to get a C. What do you grade him in his inaugural season as a head coach? And really, it turns out really to be truly his first year as a true play caller as well. What do you see for Dougie P?
Yeah, I know you don't like, hearing about the C's, but that's about what I'm going to give him. I'm going to give him a C. It was his first year. There were some games earlier on in the season where I thought he cost them games. There was a Giants game where he made some really poor decisions going for it on 4th down. Not because he went for it on 4th down, but the play calls that he had on 4th down to not go up the middle, to kind of go, horizontally instead of, straight pound it. The Dallas game, should have won that game. Doug Peterson was one of the reasons why they didn't win. So you can look at his coaching and say he lost, a game or two for the Eagles this season. Now, there are, I guess, some bright spots. I don't want to say that there are, but what I like is
less dark.
Yeah, there's some less darkness. Yeah, there you go. There's a better way to say it. But I like some of the things I see on offense because he has all of these different formations, and I like the 3 tight end sets. And there are some things that I like. How he utilized Zach Ertz late in the season, even though it was meaningless. I like some of those things. But in terms of being an in-game play caller, there's a lot he needs to improve on. But in terms of his scheme is basically where the NFL is going. The spread principles, does a lot of different type of things. So he has the scheme that will work for the time that we are in. But I just question he gets reckless at times. Going for the way he goes for it on 4th down sometimes, you don't always need to go for a 4th and 1. And it seems like whenever we're on the opposing side of the field and it's a 4th and 1, 4th and 2, he always goes for it. You don't have to do that. That is reckless when you leave points on the field. And that's something I think he needs to improve on.
Certainly, and I think the funny part is I agree with you in all of that, is that I remember coming off of Andy Reid, and we thought he was a very conservative type of guy, coaching style, except for the only thing he was aggressive with was using timeouts. And Chip Kelly, and the fans were excited that Chip always went for it on 4th down. Not always, but he was more aggressive on 4th downs. And now you got Doug Peterson. We're like, whoa, can you be more like Andy Reid now in that aspect of it? So that's very interesting. But I would have to agree, a little average type of year for Doug Peterson. You agree he should not have been fired?
No, you got to keep a coach for more than 1 year. I truly believe in that. Even though Doug was like maybe the 3rd or 4th or 5th guy that I wanted, you got to give him more than 1 season. So Adam Gase was the guy that I wanted, and it breaks my heart to see the Dolphins doing so well because Adam Gase and Carson Wentz, that would have been a match made in heaven.
right there. Yeah. I agree he should not have been fired. He should still have his job as he does. But there was an inkling, I thought, that there might have been something brewing. I think you saw that Jeff McLean tweet. That was kind of lost in the McLean gate or whatever they're calling it. That happened on Sunday. But the only two times that Eagles coaches in recent memory did not speak the immediate day after the season ending were the 2 years that Chip Kelly and Andy Reid were let go. So very interesting trend, but of course didn't come to fruition. And also Jeffrey Lurie chose not to speak in the locker room afterwards. But again, I think that has a little bit more to do with McLean Gate than the lack of confidence in Doug Peterson or maybe a hint at him potentially being fired. Nonetheless, Dougie P sticking with it. Now, maybe not all the coaches are going in with him into the new year. A lot of rumors going about and also getting confirmations as well. Frank Reich, offensive coordinator, because he has shown a lot, is going to get a head coaching interview with the Buffalo Bills. And then even going farther down the offensive ladder there, DeFilippo, the quarterback's coach, I believe that was the Jets, wanted him for an offensive coordinator look.
Yeah, the Eagles denied the request for him to be interviewed today. So he will not be the Jets offensive coordinator.
So, the Eagles doing one of their own Todd Bowles dirty there and not letting him talk to them. So what do you make of that? Do you feel, how do you look at that? Do you think the Eagles were right with not letting the Jets have a chance for the interview, or what would you have done if you're the front office? I saw one thing, and I kind of agree with this notion, is that there's too much uncertainty. So if, say, Frank Reich gets the job at Buffalo, and then say John gets the job at the Jets, now you have to fill two positions, high caliber positions within your offense just like that, because they're off to different things. And that's not good, especially if you're trying to groom, a young quarterback. Everyone's like, oh, Carson Wentz has the great education triumvirate with DeFilippo, Doug Peterson, and Frank Reich, and two of those three pieces, boom, gone in a moment's notice.
Yeah. The way I kind of see it, I think Frank Reich is going to get some interviews and he'll get some exposure, but do I necessarily think he's not coming back next year? Not really. I think he might be a head coaching candidate, like a true head coaching candidate, maybe 2 years from now, 3 years from now. I could be wrong. Watch him get hired by somebody, but I have not seen enough from him over the duration that I've seen him as an offensive coordinator. I haven't seen enough from him to think that he's a head coach yet. Could be wrong, but I don't think he's there yet. I think he'll get a couple looks. I think he'll get some interviews. I don't think that's going to happen. John DeFilippo, we shall see. He's been kind of like everywhere as a quarterbacks coach. He's had I think this is his third different job now. And wherever he goes, he's coaching a young quarterback. He was with the Jets in 2009 when they had Mark Sanchez as a rookie. He was with the Raiders when they had Derek Carr as a rookie. Now it's Carson Wentz. So he's used to grooming young quarterbacks. And I think that's what the Jets were looking for him as an offensive coordinator, because they're a team that needs a quarterback. They're picking number 6 overall in the NFL draft. Maybe they go after one of these prospects, and DeFilippo's a guy that can groom a young quarterback. As for Jim Schwartz, he's another guy that could be getting some head coaching interest. It wouldn't shock me if he got hired as a head coach, but I think he's also a year away. I think he needs to prove more with this defense before he moves on and gets a head coaching gig. But again, I could be wrong. There are a lot of vacancies right now. So these teams could go in a multitude of different directions.
Certainly. And I would have to disagree a bit on Frank. I agree with you that I think needs a few more years, but I think he's only going to get one interview, and that interview is going to be with the Buffalo Bills. I just don't see anyone else having any stock with him. But at the same time, I put a high chance on him getting that Buffalo job. That's like the former high school star quarterback coming back home and coaching his team, but that's the only place he would ever coach, because that's just his school. Frank Reich, orchestrated the greatest comeback in NFL history for the Buffalo Bills. That's the only place that he would get a job so soon in the head coaching ranks. And Schwartz, I think he's just the guy.
That's what happened with Doug Peterson. So I kind of somewhat agree with that, but I just don't think it'll happen. But would it shock me? No.
No, sure. And I think Schwartz is just the guy that I don't think should ever get a shot again as a head coach. Obviously there's a lot of people that do get shots, and surprisingly, you don't know why, i.e. Mike Singletary. But, Schwartz, I think he's just a guy that's better as a defensive coordinator. Especially, I think it did well for him to be out of the NFL, or out of coaching football, I should say. I know he was still employed by the league looking at some advisor roles, but he needed to kind of step back. And I think he still didn't do as big of a step forward this year as a lot of teams hoped. After 3 games, we were not only saying the Eagles are going to win the Super Bowl, gave Howie Roseman Executive of the Year. I gave Carson Wentz Rookie of the Year. We also said Jim Schwartz was going to leave and be a head coach. And now none of those things happened. So I think Jim Schwartz is going to be staying at least for a little bit while as the D coordinator of the Eagles.
I'll give you a comparison because what you said, it makes sense, and I get it.
Okay.
So I'll give you
That's a start.
I'll give you Norv Turner, all right, because he's a guy that's more of a like back in the day. He's better off being an offensive coordinator as a head coach. He's had so many head coaching shots, and wherever he goes, he doesn't seem to do very well with it. So I think being an offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator for Jim Schwartz, I think that's where he's better off. But do I see him potentially getting another head coaching shot down the line? I could see it just because of how many shots Norv Turner had. So that's like an example I could give you for that.
That's a good person. That's a good point. And, Norv obviously worked out well. I believe he was last in Minnesota. Then he just, up and left.
Yeah. Sam Bradford's like, I want Pat Shurmur. And I think that's what happened there.
Yeah, probably. And, he's so that's a good point as well. And there's so much turnover in the NFL nowadays. Black Monday turned into Black Sunday evening, afternoon, depending on when your last kickoff was. And then, it turns out general managers are being fired 4 days before the last game of the season as well. So there's so much turnover in the NFL. Anyone is viable for a position. Now, before we jump into the Howie Roseman year ending presser, we'll have to pay some bills here quickly on the Philly Influencer Live podcast on location within the Bitterbirds' Google Hangout. Colin Good and the goodteamsales.com is a huge sponsor of Philly Influencer Live podcast. Appreciate them. Are you or someone you know trying to sell your house? If yes, please take a moment to read the new 3D software that the Good Team Sells is providing all of its clients. That will make your property stand out above all other listings. Colin is going the extra mile for his clients by purchasing this camera that takes the potential buyer inside your house. Other listings only means your house being sold faster and, of course, more money. Please see some examples listed below on this page on phillyinfluencer.com and contact Colin Good today. All right, Adrian, thank you for giving us this backup plan and allowing me to drive this ship on your turf, giving me the keys to the car. Really appreciate that. I would have too much of an ego to let that happen. So I appreciate you doing that for us.
No problem, man. No problem. It's all about PI, baby.
It's all about PI and not DPI, not defensive pass interference. We don't like that. And so going into Howie Roseman's press conference, obviously that's something that he's obligated to do, unlike Doug Peterson, who opted to not speak at the end of the season. Howie Roseman, your biggest takeaways? I know he really kind of dove into what the plan was going to be for the front office in terms of the structure heading into the draft, building the draft board, what will happen draft night. And he also talked about some other player personnel situations as far as who they would like to keep, what they would like to do. And then, of course, he was asked about how tough it was to inherit a Chip Kelly depleted team. And I think he gave a good answer to that one as well. But what were your biggest takeaways from Howie's time at the podium?
Yeah, it was 30 minutes worth of shenanigans, but the biggest takeaway is Joe Douglas being able to set up the Eagles draft board, having him have so much control in this coming draft, and I love it because obviously the Eagles they haven't really exactly had the best drafts recently. You think of some of these first round picks, whether it was Chip or Howie or Andy calling the shots, Marcus Smith, Nelson Aguilar, Danny Watkins. You could go on and on and on. And you look at Joe Douglas and what he did in Baltimore. He was there for 15 seasons, and as a regional scout for them, he was responsible for Joe Flacco and Ray Rice. In another territory that he was in, he was responsible for Pernell McPhee when he got promoted in 2012. Then it was guys like Marshall Yanda. He replaced Ray Lewis with C.J. Mosley. Haloti Ngata went on elsewhere. And they picked up Brandon Williams. So obviously Ozzie Newsome is a genius, and he's the GM. But Joe Douglas played an integral part in that Ravens organization throughout the years in the draft. That's a team that builds their team through the draft, and that's what I really believe in. when it comes to the NFL. The Eagles have been a team that really attacks free agency and the dream team and all this crap. And I'm sick of being that. I don't want to be that anymore. I want to be a team that builds through the draft. And I'm hoping with Howie says it's like they're changing the way they're doing things. And it seems like that they're going to follow this Ravens model. And I like where they're going. Howie says he has final say. I just hope he's humble enough to just let Joe make the picks. Howie, you make the trades. You're great at making trades. You can turn an apple into, a fruit roll-up and a bag of Doritos and a hoagie from Wawa. See, that's what he can do with his trades. You show up at the kids' lunch table, that's what he's doing, turning that apple into all that. But Joe Douglas, he's the guy that should be making these picks. And I'm excited moving forward.
Yeah, I believe so as well. I think he is making the right decision, and I think I like that he's letting him kind of do the ground, lay the groundwork, and I think not only is Howie going to have that decision to make on draft day, I think that's going to. I think Doug Peterson's going to be in the room. I think they all might have a vote as well, and to kind of decide who's going to be the one drafted, which will be huge. And to go to the Baltimore Ravens model, I'm fine with that as well. It results in a Joe Flacco, another small time quarterback in college who turned out to be the quarterback in the NFL, and the same hopefully happens with Carson Wentz, and hopefully they eventually find that Super Bowl trophy as well. So going into kind of the player personnel part of the player part of the personnel part, what did you hear from him as far as attacking free agency, the draft, position-wise, that you agreed nor disagreed with? It sounded like he really is going to be aggressive on cornerbacks and the secondary. I think he said that all he did was put Band-Aids on their cornerback situation.
Yeah, and he said that, and I completely agree. And when you look at how this offseason is going to play itself out and how the draft is somewhere where cornerbacks, there's a lot of talent at this position. It's several rounds deep. And, for instance, if you compare this class to like years past, a guy that you're going to get in the second or even third rounder, these guys are almost like first round picks. So what I want to do in this draft, if a guy like Leonard Fournette or Dalvin Cook is available with your first round pick, attack, get that running back, get that guy that can really control the tempo of your offense, really move the chains, play that slow, methodical style of football that you want to play. And on the defensive side of the ball, obviously, you need a cornerback. We saw teams pick on the Eagles secondary the second half of the season because what they were doing, negating the defensive line and their pressure by getting the ball out quick and really feasting on the cornerbacks. And when you can get some cornerbacks, bring some guys in here, all of a sudden, some of those hurries and some of those pressures that the defensive line was getting, they're going to turn into sacks because new blood, new talent, better talent coming in. These guys are going to be able to cover that receiver for a second or two longer than these guys that they have now, and it's going to help really ratchet up the pressure from the defensive line. So, and overall, you're going to see a drastic change on your defense. It's going to be a lot of improvements being made. As for wide receiver, that's another position that the Eagles are going to have to obviously attack this offseason. Not a great draft class when it comes to receiver, but there are some free agents out there. Terrell Pryor, Alshon Jeffrey, Deshaun Jackson. That's been a big rumored name that might come into Philly. So a lot of different ways they can go, but cornerback, I think, is something that is imperative. And everyone wants to talk wide receiver, but I kind of think cornerback might actually be more important.
Yeah, it's unfortunate the Eagles don't have someone like an Eric Rowe or something that they could really just throw in there. That would be a great get. But I agree. I think the Eagles wide receiver wise, I think you go to Terrell Pryor and you say, hey, listen, who the hell wants to be in Cleveland? Here's just what we're going to give you. And if you don't like that, we'll give you whatever the heck you want. Because I think Terrell Pryor is such a true athlete. I think he's a guy that cares, which is more than you can say about Dorial Green-Beckham. I think he's a guy that has good hands, which is more than you can say about everyone except for Paul Turner. And he's a tall guy, which is what you can say about DGB and Jordan Matthews. But Terrell Pryor is good. Terrell Pryor has the capability of being a number one receiver. Jordan Matthews should not be a number one receiver on any team in the NFL. He should be a solid number two. If you got a Terrell Pryor and you got a a Jordan Matthews and you put the Bryce Treggs out there, you put Paul Turner, and DGB could just run quick slants. Anytime you're going to run quick slants, just fucking put him in there because that's all he can do. And I think if you get Terrell Pryor instantaneously, that is going to jump you up the board as far as quality wide receiver cores in the NFL. Because honestly, I don't watch every NFL team. I don't have this red zone package Sunday ticket thing. It doesn't. My food stamps doesn't pay for that. So I only see I don't see that much. But I'm telling you, they are 32nd out of 32 in wide receiving cores are the Eagles.
Yeah, they're real bad. And something else I wanted to say, maybe why wide receiver may not be as important as some people think, although it's very important. The way Doug Peterson's offense is, the way he utilizes tight ends in the passing game, the way he utilizes running backs in the passing game, wide receiver is not important a position for the Eagles as it is for other teams. So we're seeing the emergence of the tight ends like Trey Burton late in the season, really Zach Ertz at the end of the season. This is what he does every December,
every year.
Last 4 games of the season. Now it's got to translate. So hopefully he can do it at the start of next year. And what gives you hope is that he finally has a quarterback in here that he has, built some rapport with, because he's gone through so many guys, Nick Foles, Sam Bradford, Michael Vick, even played with Matt Barkley a couple games. So Mark Sanchez. I mean, there's no stability at the quarterback position. Now that there is, maybe Zach Ertz can maybe take that next step. We shall see. But it seems like every year is his breakout year. So no more excuses for him. He's just got to come and bring it.
Very true, very true. So what do the Eagles need to do in the next couple weeks as far as, internally, not a couple weeks, but the first couple weeks of, that new league year and all that good stuff internally? Obviously I think Benny Logan is a guy that needs to stay. When he was gone for a few weeks, you could just see teams were just being easily able to run through the defensive line of the Philadelphia Eagles. Other internal moves, maybe, I don't know, is there pieces to be traded? Are there pieces to be cut? I think the Eagles value a lot of the players they have, a lot of players they don't. They signed all their people from their practice squad except for Aaron Murray. So they want to at least keep them and look at them. What do you see internally the Eagles should do and make sure those are the right decisions to make?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do because they are a little bit cash strapped, obviously, all the money that they've spent the last couple off seasons. So a guy like Benny Logan, he needs to kind of take a little bit of a pay cut, but he's a guy that has made it known that he wants to be back in Philadelphia. So maybe he would be willing to maybe take less money here than he would elsewhere because I would like to re-sign him for the right price.
Yes.
Other guys, to look at Jason Peters, it'll be interesting to see what they do with him too because he's an $11 million cap hit, but I think he's a guy that would be important to bring back because of the leadership that he brings. And he is older, but this year I thought he bounced back pretty well. Playing in a slower, methodical offense, I think really helped him instead of being in Chip's offense. He was, seemingly out, he had an injury every game, it seemed like. So,
right.
So more, he was better this year. And maybe he would be a guy that takes less money. I don't know if that would be the case or not, but so I'm curious to see how that plays out. And then there are guys that might get cut, like Michael Kendricks, Ryan Matthews. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Connor Barwin. So some names that are in limbo. You cut some guys, it frees up more money so you can get receivers. But do you want to part way with these guys too? So it'll be interesting to see what Howie and company, what they do.
Right. Do you feel that those moves and those decisions could come sooner rather than later, or do you think the Eagles might be a little bit more pragmatic with it? I obviously don't have in front of me the deadlines and when things start and end and all that, but do you think this is more of a decision the Eagles will make sooner or later as far of, maybe in the next couple months, or are we looking to maybe closer to the summer?
Well, in terms of cuts, I think it'd be later. I think what they would try to do is try to work the trades first, see if somebody – throw some lines out there, see if anybody bites on a Michael Kendricks or, so instead of cutting guys, you try to get some value back for them and some draft compensation, something like that. So in terms of free agents and bringing somebody in here like a wideout, I think you got to go make a move early. So really bring one of those guys in. Deshaun Jackson would be a cheaper choice than a Terrell Pryor. or
older
Alshon Jeffrey. Yeah, older choice, and that's the problem. So yeah, with him is age, but because of that age, he comes at a cheaper price. So because they are cap strapped, maybe that's something that they do. I'm not going to sit here and try to play GM and stuff like that, but there's a lot of different ways that they can go. It'll be really interesting to see how everything plays itself out.
Certainly. So, what I mean, this is it's obviously a difficult question. You say you don't want to play, general manager and kind of see this, but I guess more than as a fan, then if you don't want to put on, I know you like wearing hats, but if you don't want to put on that GM hat, what is the one move that you feel you need to see the Eagles make this season that would put them in a solid position moving forward? Is it making sure that they get the number 1 or number 2 cornerback in the draft, or is it that they make sure they get a Deshaun Jackson and a Terrell Pryor and or one of those two in free agency, or is it something else? What is like one move? And you don't got to give me a name if it's a draftee, but you just say, I need to make sure that the Eagles at this offseason get one of the top 3 cornerbacks that leave college this year.
This might be a different answer than a lot of other people might give. I'll say this. If they can get Leonard Fournette or Dalvin Cook, it changes the offense. It changes the running back position. And I'll say this too, because it'll help out your wide receivers too. If Dalvin Cook starts running the ball, not that he'll be Zeke in his rookie season, not that Leonard Fournette will be Zeke, but these guys are very highly regarded. And if they do come in here and they make an immediate impact, what that does is when you run that play action, that will suck up the linebackers, that will fool the cornerbacks, and it will make it easier for your wide receivers. It'll make it easier for Carson Wentz to throw the ball. You won't have to worry about fitting the ball in the tight windows. He'll have some more space to work with. So getting a running back like Dalvin Cook, it helps out everywhere. Helps out everybody. So that's the way I look at it. Even though it's running back and you may not think that it's a position of need, he's an X factor. He's a guy that can really come in here and be a legitimate weapon. And that's the way I look at it.
Absolutely. So that's the Eagles season. They wrap up sub 500 record. Not surprising by a lot of folks. Maybe I am a bit surprised and a bit disappointed. I think starting 3-0, you have to throw out those preseason predictions and expectations and start things anew after the 3-0. And I think the Eagles kind of threw it away. I think Doug Peterson's coaching, as you mentioned, I think obviously the fumble at Detroit really kind of changed some things. And I truly think the schedule didn't do any favors as well for a rookie quarterback and young receivers and a rookie head coach as well. These two things, meaning that they had an extremely tough opponents and then also the bye coming after that first few weeks of the season. So any last thoughts on the Eagles season before we switch to the hardwood and talk about the Sixers who are heading to Boston as we speak?
Nothing really much we need to say. You just said it good there. So yeah, it's a little disappointing to start 3-0, but teams figured us out. We couldn't adjust back. I think that's kind of what happened. How Carson regressed a little bit as the season went on. He started off so hot, and that was the thing. He was not going to sustain that excellence, and that's just what happened. So yeah, he was good though as a rookie. Just go on, move on.
There you go. Mr. Bitterbird's not so bitter about the Birds. Before we head to the Sixers, Skull Shaver. If you're bald like Sean, then the Skull Shaver is the perfect way to keep your head nice and smooth. Skip the clubs and get with the program. The Skull Shaver is the #1 razor available for bald men, now available at Amazon and Bed Bath & Beyond. When was the last time you were at Bed Bath & Beyond, Adrian?
I might have shopped there for my mom.
Also, be on the lookout for the Skull Shaver Beastmobile before every Eagles home game. They were there all the time this past season. I'm sure they'll continue it in the 2017 campaign. Skull Shaver and BeastClipper.com. We're out tailgating, giving away free cuts. Don't waste money on cuts. Go to Skull Shaver and check them out. They'll have details, and I'm sure, like I said, they'll be back in the D-Lot in the 2017 campaign. So speaking of seasons and haircuts, Nerlens Noel needs a freaking haircut this season. And the Eagles, or excuse me, not the Eagles, the Sixers are, I don't really know how to put it right now. How would you put the Sixers right now with where they're at right now with their big man situation?
Yeah. Well, I think they need to try and experiment more with different lineups. They were stubborn to play Noel for a little while. But from what I'm seeing with Embiid and Jahlil Okafor, I don't like what I'm seeing. It doesn't seem like that match is going to work. Here's the problem. Joel Embiid is you need to give him free reign. You got to let him kind of be wherever he wants to be out on the floor. And when you have Jahlil Okafor, he's taking away the interior. He's not allowing Joel Embiid to play inside. Joel Embiid has to stay outside. And while he can stay outside, that's not the strength of his game. He's 7'2". It's amazing what he can do along the perimeter. He can, flip that ball fake, drive to the rim. He can shoot the three. But he's going to be more effective on the block. And when you have Nerlens Noel, when you have Jahlil Okafor playing offensively with him, that prevents that. Now, what Noel brings to the table is defense, obviously. And Joel Embiid, Nerlens Noel, they're interchangeable defensively. Both of them can guard the perimeter. Both of them can protect the rim. And with Okafor, obviously he can't play a lick of defense. So when he's out there with Embiid, you're lacking a little bit defensively, and offensively, it's hard to build a cohesion because they don't really mesh together, I don't think. So to pair a guy with Embiid, the guy that's actually been the best matchup with him, the best pairing with him, was actually been Ersan Ilyasova because he's a stretch forward. And he's a guy that spreads the floor for Embiid, that allows him to bang on the block down low, that allows him to stay on the perimeter if he would like to, so he can maintain that versatility in his game. So it lets him do everything. So that almost makes me think maybe Okafor or Noel, maybe both of those guys aren't great pairings for Embiid. Maybe it's Ben Simmons, because Ben Simmons playing that point forward, being the four guy, he's the guy that likes to drive the lanes. He likes the guy that likes to play the fast break game, go up and down the floor. Spreading the floor is key for Embiid. That's what you need to do. You need to let him have that free roam, I think, offensively.
So we're going to wrap this up here in a couple minutes. Adrian, I know you got a lot going on. I'm going to give your vocal cords some rest before you get prepped for your later show tonight. And I think you kind of alluded to it here for a second. What would you do? You're Brian Colangelo. I know you didn't want to be Howie Roseman. I'm going to force you to be Brian Colangelo.
It's fine.
What would you do with this big man situation? Is it get rid of both of them? Is it or is it get rid of one of them? And when would you make the move? Would you feel it needs to be done now or wait till the offseason?
Yeah, we'll see what happens with Noel. That's the thing. It's Noel is a free agent, and he hasn't really shown that he wants to be here. But if it were me, if I was Brian Colangelo, like the question is, I would trade Jahlil Okafor. I would rather have Nerlens Noel with Joel Embiid than Jahlil Okafor. It just doesn't seem like Okafor and Embiid can play together as effectively as another pairing. I think Okafor is a guy that just might be better off somewhere else. And I like his game, but I do think he is a tad overrated, and I hate the way he plays defensively. And you pair him with Embiid defensively, I don't like that at all. So I would rather keep Noel than Okafor. But it would also not surprise me at some point in time if both of those guys move on from the Sixers. So Embiid is a special type of talent, obviously, but he's also a unique type of talent. And he needs a stretch forward, not a guy like a Noel or an Okafor that really plays inside and more interior type of player.
Certainly, I think, like you said it well, he's a good talent, but he's a talent that doesn't give you free range on what you can do with your other four positions. You kind of need to cater that around him and who's going to be there that's going to slot well with him. Well, you know what slots well with me? Adrian Fedke here on the Philly Influencer Live podcast, helping us out with the technological. So basically in the credits, we're going to give him the IT technician credit as well as co-host for this week, helping us hang out on the Bitter Birds' home with the Philly Influencer Live podcast. Adrian, we appreciate you, and we'll probably have you on soon, maybe sooner than later if we can't figure out our other technology and we need to come back to the Bitter Birds location.
Hey, man, bring me on whatever you want. It's practice. Anytime we can record together, it's cool. See, we got more cohesion than Embiid and Okafor.
That's true. That's true. And then, maybe we'll say Sean is like Embiid, who's sitting over there with his dreads, pissed off he doesn't get to play any minutes anymore. But nonetheless, that's all for us. Check us out next time on the Philly Influencer Live podcast. Adrian Fedke, Tyler Trumbauer. Check out the website, phillyinfluencer.com.
Take care, everybody.